Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Ma tohu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael.
Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Good morning. Welcome. My name is Rabbi Lizzie Heidemann. Welcome to Mishkan. For whom is this your first time in a long time or ever at a Shabbat morning service? Great. No shame. No shame. In fact, like put your hand even high. Yes. Own it. Totally own it. That's great. Welcome. I'm so glad that you get to have that here with us this morning. And how many of you are actually here because you're celebrating the BMitzvah of Sydney, Rose and Keys? Yeah. Well, welcome to everyone. And who is here because you're like, it's Shabbos and I went to shul? Yeah. Welcome. And I'm so glad you're here too. And we're all here. And so it is Saturday, the Jewish day of rest, otherwise known as Shabbat. It is also the 8th day of Passover. So the very, very last day of a week-long holiday in which many Jewish people for the past week have not been eating anything leavened, including pasta or bread products or hamburger buns or cereal or and name your favorite carbohydrate, and it's probably not kosher for Passover. But you can figure out a way to make it out of matzah. And so for those of you who stay for lunch today, that's what's on the menu. And also vegetables and other things that are totally kosher for Passover. But the idea is that during this week of Passover, we change things up. We switch things up. It sort of challenges us to live differently in the world and live without something that, for many of us, God bless you, is just kind of a part of living. Like bread has yeast in it, and yeast just floats generally in the air. And so for 1 week, we kind of adjust our lives and diet to remind ourselves that we have free will. It reminds us that we can be creative and do things differently. I was just talking with somebody who was observing Passover and saying, I didn't give up a single thing for Passover. I mean, I did. I gave up bread, but I could replace all of it with different kinds of matzah things. You can make French toast out of matzah. You can make whatever. You can make pizza out of matzah. You can make a grilled cheese out. Anyway, point being, part of what Passover challenges us to do and what Shabbat challenges us to do is to live differently in the world. And Shabbat is a day of rest, and part of that rest is just not doing many of the things that we are used to doing every single day, and reminding ourselves that we can break ourselves of those habits, even if they're habits we fully intend to go back to the second Shabbat is over. Those include scrolling on Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever it is that can occupy you for hours. That includes doing work, answering emails. I don't know, pick your favorite thing that you do all week that you're actually grateful to have a couple of hours of a break from right now. And so we're going to enter into that space together, sort of as honoring the last day of Passover and also Shabbat. And part of how we do that together is we pray, we sing, we might even dance, we learn, we study Torah. And all of those things, for most of us, are going to be a real change from what we would do any day of the week or maybe any other day of the entire year. And so this is a real opportunity to, for those of you for whom this is new, be really present to learn something new and to do something new and have a new experience. And we're going to try and make it as accessible as possible. The books that you just opened up to page 10, they have Hebrew, they have transliteration so that you can actually sing along with the Hebrew even if you don't know Hebrew, and of course English translation. And this is our davening team. Davening means prayer in Yiddish, and it's a group of Mishkan people who are helping model and lead prayer. But what that is to say is they are not experts and they're not professionals. You don't have to be a professional to pray. God forbid. Everybody who has walked in here today is qualified, whether or not you've ever done this before. So I'm so happy you're here. This is Rabbi Dina Cowens and Rabbi Stephen Philp, and we're excited to jump into this service with you. And to begin, Jen and Jeff are going to present Sydney with her talis. towards the mic so YouTube can hear you.
Sydney, we proudly present you with this talis. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'titatef v'tzizit.
Amen.
If you haven't had a chance yet to put on your own talit and you want to go ahead and do that alongside Sydney. And I think we have some extras at the back if you want one and you don't have one.
Sydney, it has been so wonderful to be on this journey with you. I didn't meet a Jewish person until I was in high school, and he was the valedictorian. And I've come to learn that being Jewish is about learning. I married into a Jewish family that embraced me and introduced me to culturally sustaining traditions. And we are grateful to both of our families for making their way here today to support Sydney in this process. Sydney, your curiosity and your desire to connect to your family's history led me to find Mishkan, a community that is aligned with our values of inclusion, critically reflective thought, learning, and social justice. When I told Dad that he and I would also be taking the BMitzvah classes along with you, he was a bit skeptical. But after the first meeting with your cohort, he said, not that bad. So we have enjoyed so much and have been so inspired by your teachers, Rabbi Dina, Lizzie, Hannah. They have been so much a part of your growth and development, taking you from not knowing any Hebrew at the start of the process to being up here on the Bima today. Dad has asked me to read the words that he has written in honor of this occasion, since he tends to get a little bit emotional. And since I don't speak Hebrew, it gives me a little bit of a bigger speaking part. So Sydney, this is from your dad. On this most joyous day, we are proud of the person you have become. We are proud of your work ethic and most proud of your compassion for others. We are honored that of your own choosing, you have taken this path to Jewish adulthood. We are honored that you and Maddie have taken such pride in your Jewish heritage. You wear the Star of David proudly to school and talk with others about the responsibility of being Jewish. It's not an easy task to express a Jewish identity these days, and it can be dangerous. However, you have chosen to do it, and for that we are grateful. Your ancestors would also be grateful that your Jewishness is meaningful to you. Your great-grandparents could not see this day, but I can tell you that they would be so honored and proud, as would our relatives, your relatives, who never made it out of Europe. We wish they could know, because of you and your sister and others like you, our people will not go quietly into the night. We will survive. Congratulations, Sydney. We love you, and we are honored to stand with you on this important day in your life.
Beautiful. We turn to 29, Ashrei, which means joy. Already feeling it. Ashrei, Ashrei, Yoshvei, Beitecha, Od Yahalelucha. So you can continue to go back and forth with Ashrei. Read down the words with me. the bottom of 30. Tehillah, Adonai, yedaber pi, vayevarech kol basar, shem kodsho le'olam va'ed, va'anachnu nevarech yah, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah, everyone. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Ashrei, ashrei, yoshvei beitecha. Od Hallelujah. Od Hallelujah. We turn to 33. Hallelujah, 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 el bekocho. Hallelujah, el bekocho. Hallelujah, bekiauzo. Hallelujah, mikuratai. Hallelujah, kerov kudlo. Hallelujah, 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 We're going to turn to 38. And what we're working our way through right now is a part of the service called Psuke de Zimra, which means verses of praise, which is kind of a funny thing to name one section of the service, because literally the entire service is praising God. The entire service, from start to finish, it's Baruch, blessing, Ashrei, joy, hallelujah, which means hallelujah, praise God. It has been asked by a skeptical Jew, or by a skeptical anybody who sat in a service and said, why do we need to praise God so much? Is God so vain that God needs all of this, all of these words, doesn't God know how great God is if God is so great? And maybe, you know what? Is God aware of the war in Ukraine? Is God aware of coronavirus? Because maybe God's actually not so great. And maybe all of these words are not the right words. Maybe we need some different words, right? Like maybe these words feel inauthentic in our mouths. And thinking about, I have 2 children, and they are regularly great, and they are regularly infuriating. But every day, multiple times a day, probably dozens of times a day, I say I love you, right? I don't imagine to myself, like, well, they heard it once a couple weeks ago. They know, right? Like, of course not. Like, that would be negligence. That would be like criminal parental negligence to imagine that there's a being in this world who you love and who you want to express that love to, even though they drive you crazy sometimes, even though there are things you want to work on and talk through, right? And you still say, let me tell you how great you are. Let me reinforce for you in as many different ways as I can how much I love you and express that to you in so many different ways. So the Jewish tradition has hundreds of words for that kind of expression. And it's all in the Siddur, the prayer book. That's why the prayer book is so long. That's also why we don't do the entire thing. As you'll notice, we'll skip from this page to this page, skip 5 pages, skip 10 pages. It's all beautiful poetry of that kind of expression. Some of it's from the Psalms, some of it's from Proverbs, some of it's from the Torah and the Tanakh. Some of it was written by rabbis 2,000 years ago, and we sort of extracted from the Talmud. Some of it was written over the last 2,000 years by people, along the way in different places all over the world. But it's how we remind ourselves. We don't just do this in prayer. We do this in life. And so prayer is actually a way of reinforcing for ourselves how we want to be in the world, which is to say people who engage even with the things that drive us crazy, because they drive us crazy, with love and reminding ourselves what is good that hooks us in so that we can say, oh, the reason why I care so much about this is actually because I love you. Let me tell you why. So we turn to 38, and we'll go from these words, Barchi Nafshi, into words that we actually only say on festivals, which today is the last day of Passover. So we have some special things that we'll do just today because it's like a special, different kind of Shabbat. All right, these words can go fast. I'm noticing there some folks you're like holding back because you're like, I don't know these words. I'm not going to open my mouth. My invitation to you is, I don't know these words. Open your mouth anyway. Because if you look around, there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know these words, I'm not going to open my mouth. But if all of you open your mouths and try, then nobody will know who's doing it wrong. Okay, here we go.
Barchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol rabai et shem kodsho.
Try that again.
Barchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol rabai et shem kodsho.
Try that again, Barchi.
Barchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol rabai et shem kodsho. Barchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol rabai et shem kodsho.
Turn the page.
Ha'el v'taftimot uzecha hagadol b'chol shemecha hagibor lanetzach v'hanora b'noratecha ha'melech hayoshev al kisei rabbeinu. Ha'el v'taftimot uzecha hagadol b'chol shemecha hagibor lanetzach v'hanora ניסה.
Last time, Barchi.
ברכי נפשי את אדוני ואת חוק רבי את שם קודשו.
We turn to 40 and we stand. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו, שיר ושפחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח, גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך גדול ותשבחות, אל ההודאות, אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים. 41. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. אמן. יעמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו. אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולם. You can just join me. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, יתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל, שמי תקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דם ירחן ביעמה, אמרו amen.
We'll turn and face east, which is in the direction of the windows for Baruch.
We're on 42.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. You can be seated if you would like. Shalom, borei et hakol.
Each day you restore. The sky and the windows surrounded with gloom, filling the sun out of their resting places.
We'll continue on the bottom of page 48. Or chadash atzion tayir v'nizkechu lanu meira le'oror, Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'meorot.
We're on 49. Not everything is about how much, praise and love we have for God. Some of this is actually about how, in order to exist in this world, we have been loved into being. And so, ahava rabba, big love, ahavtanu, we have been loved with. Adonai Eloheinu, from the life force of the universe, the love force of the universe. Ahava rabba, ahavtanu, Adonai Eloheinu, chema gedola v'tzera, chamalta aleinu. Avinu malkeinu, ba'avur avoteinu, shabachtu b'cha, shabachtu b'cha, Avinu malkeinu. V'tilamdem, v'tilamdem chukei chayim, ken techonenu lamdeinu, Avinu ha'avarachama, ha'merachem rachem aleinu. V'ten b'libenu, v'ten b'libenu lecha. Place in our hearts the willingness to understand and to listen and to learn and to teach. And not just listen and learn, but to do. Ukayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha be'ahava, v'ha'er eineinu b'toratecha, v'davek libeinu b'mitzvotecha. בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בתחתון נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך We gather the four corners of our tzitzit together. V'havienu leshalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tovichenu komemiyut
פועל ישועתך ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון וקראתנו לשמך גדול באמת.
Continuing on 50.
ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה.
51.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך וכן היו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך ובשרתם להיות על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
We turn to 53, and if you're wearing a tallis, you can grab one of those corners. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber al bnei Yisrael, ve'amarta alehem, v'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei bigdeihem ledorotam, v'nanu al tzitzit, hakanaf tir techelet, v'aya lachem letzitzit. Uritem אותו, זכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We're going to turn to 57. Last Friday night, many people may have been sitting around Seder tables doing the first night of Passover. This is the last day of Passover. We are still very much in Zman Cherutenu, the season of our freedom, and thinking about redemption, thinking about liberation, and thinking about the places where it still has not happened yet. And so as we sing this, which we do in every service, multiple times a day actually, we're holding on to that. we are holding on to that. We're not letting that go. We're not letting that fade into the background. We're lifting it up. You know, every holiday is a booster shot in the Jewish tradition for a certain kind of awareness, for a certain kind of consciousness, a certain kind of energy. You know, sort of like Mother's Day. It's like you should, you know, love and call your mother all the time, but on Mother's Day especially, you know, it sort of reminds you, oh yeah, you know, so Passover is that for liberation and that for redemption. So we hold on to that as we go into Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh feleh, nora tehilot oseh feleh. Won't you help me sing
These songs of freedom.
these songs of freedom? It's all I ever had.
Redemption songs.
Redemption songs.
Shira Chadasha.
Shira Chadasha, Shirechu Geulim, Leshimcha, Al Sefat Hayam, Yachad Kulam, Hodu v'imlechu, ve'amru, Adonai Imlo, Le'olam va'ed, Adonai Imlo.
We're going to stand.
Le'olam va'ed.
Sur.
Zur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvdechi u'mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai tzvot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai Gad Yisrael.
Turn, we face east again. The tradition is to take 3 steps backward as if into a new prayer space and then 3 steps forward. You can throw your tallis over your head if you want, because after we do these first 3 blessings out loud, there'll be some space and time for personal prayer and reflection. You can use the words in the book, or you can just kind of close the book and think about what it is this morning in the space of this service that you want to pray for and you want to express gratitude for. We're on 58. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh Hakol, V'zocher Chazdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Gora Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo Be'ahava. 59. Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham U'Foked Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Meitim Atah Rav Le'Hoshia. Mashri B'Rachata, Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechaye Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim.
סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, הוא מתיר אסורים, הוא מקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות ומידו מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
שמך לעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב ינמיך
נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות ולא כל הארץ כבודו.
אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מן הציבור הצועקים למתם
אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מנסים לעומת שרפים לעומתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
ותמלוך אלוקים מחכים אנחנו לך, מתי תמלוך בציון וקרוב בימינו לנבא תשכון תפארה ותיגש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור
רומך
ודור
מלכנו
לנצח
תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. 61 מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ותשכון, תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראינה מלכותך כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך, ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני אל הקדוש. Bottom of 63.
וזיכרונה אבותינו ואימותינו.
We're going to turn to 114 and keep going even deeper into the stuff that we only get to do on special holidays. And you're like, what? More prayer that we get to do on holidays? And the answer is yes, because how often do you sing unless any of you are like professional singers or musicians, like this is a treat to get to come together and sing. So we turn to 114. Hallel is a group of psalms chosen by the sages of the Talmud to be sort of like an anthem of joyful occasions, and this is definitely one. So the blessing is up on 14. I'll say it first, and then you say Amen, and then you say the blessing, and we'll sing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et hallel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et hallel.
Shem Adonai, Yishem Adonai mevarach me'atav yad olam.
You can read these in Hebrew or in English. Plenty of people read Psalms in English every day and in every other language.
Mikimi me'afar dam me'ashpot yarim avion lehoshivi im nidivei amo moshi ve'akeret habayit ema banim smecha hallelujah.
115.
בצאת ישראל ממצרים, בית יעקב מעם לועז, הייתה יהודה לקודשו ישראל, ממשלותיו היה רב וינוס, הירדן לסעוד
anymore. You can sort of face back into the center. And if you feel yourself beginning to like move a little bit and your foot start to tap or something, like it doesn't just have to be your foot. Feel free to dance in the aisles.
Yevarech et Beit Yisrael, Yevarech et Beit Aharon, Yevarech Yirei Adonai, Hatanim im Hagedolim, Yosef Adonai Alechem, Alechem ve'Alechem, Beruchim atem b'Adonai, Oseh shamayim ba'aretz, hashamayim, shamayim la
19.
You can repeat. Turn to 121. You'll see these words in bold. Now really, you can close your eyes if you want, and again, it's just repeating. And the words, they mean, God help us, God help us, God grant us success. Hatzlichana, Hoshiana. So take a moment and actually ask yourself, what is it that you need help with, and what is it that you want help succeeding at, or that we collectively as a human race need help with or need help succeeding at? This is, this was once upon a time like a prayer for rain in a dry season, a prayer for help when one needed any kind of help. So think for a moment about, as we're calling these words out, so that they're not just words, but that they're actually a prayer. You can close your eyes if you want. Even put your hands out if you want. Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hoshiana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Ana Adonai Hatzlichana.
Hatzlichana. toward the bottom. Ki lecha tov lehodot, ulishimcha noel lezamer. Ki me'olam ad olam atah. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulam, batishbachot.
Amen. Woo! Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
We're going to take a moment for you to say hello to one another, to just like sort of take a breather from all of the conscious breathing in our prayer service. Say hello to somebody you've never met before. How did you find yourself here today? Where are you from? What brought you here? And we're going to recollect in a moment. We're going to set up for the Torah service.
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. על הרחמים היטיבה ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך העולם ונישא, אדון עולמים. יא-דה-דה-דה-דה, יא-דה-דה-דה-דה,
I want to call up Maddie and Sydney to open the ark. And as we open the ark, we're all going to stand. Where? Ah, there. All right.
Kuma Adonai ve'afutzu oivecha ve'yanusu misanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah,
כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. We're on page 77.
We'll repeat.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
can take a seat. We're entering into our Torah service. The Torah is this scroll that we just brought around. At one time, it was the height of literary technology. This was how books were written and disseminated, and we still read it this way. And part of that is because there's so much depth in it to unpack, and because a lot of that depth is quite ancient in and of itself and requires modern unpacking. It requires it. And so on the first day of Passover, there's a reading from Exodus about going out from Egypt, and then today on the last day of Passover, there is a different reading. And Sydney is going to begin to help us understand what it is we're about to open up the Torah and read today. Why don't you want to speak into a microphone? Great.
Good morning, everyone. We are approaching the last night of Passover, the Jewish holiday that celebrates the exodus of the enslaved Israelites from Egypt. The parsha that I'm reading today talks about a time long after the Exodus, where slavery still exists and was considered normal. It actually gives laws for Israelites who owned slaves themselves. This history in the parsha that I'm reading and interpreting today challenges us to grapple with a tragic past and why the oppression of human beings continues to exist to this day, just like it did long ago. I would have thought that we would learn that we shouldn't oppress others, but it continues to be overlooked, accepted, and even justified in our modern world. Why do people not take care of others even when many have all the resources they need to help? As I'm becoming a BMitzvah, it is my job to start thinking about such tough and rather disturbing questions and doing something about them. There is a tendency to dismiss young people as incapable of coming up with solutions. But in 1942, 12-year-old Maria Farkas helped a Jewish family hide from the Nazis. You'll hear more about her courage today. I believe people my age can and should care about a wide range of issues, from current events to our world's history. These are a lot of big questions. My bat mitzvah signals that I'm becoming a Jewish adult, so I'm responsible for questioning, for learning, and for acting to make a world a better and more inclusive place. I cannot fix all the problems in the world, but as a community, we can learn from one another and take action to guarantee people's safety and security in a place they call home. As you listen to my parsha, remember that it's not only Jews who can apply the lessons, but people of all faiths, non-believers, humanists, and secularists. I am grateful that all of you are here with me today to wrestle with these questions. Even though it is Passover, ironically, my parsha talks about slavery and even gives instructions for slave owning. I really don't think we should be giving a slave owner's tutorial or suggesting there's a right way to be a slave owner. But here's what the parsha says. Number 1, the slave shall serve you for 6 years. Number 2, you have to set them free in the 7th year. Number 3, you can't send them away empty-handed. You have to give them clothes and money. For context, a person could be forced into slavery to pay back a debt. They would have to serve whoever they owed money to for 7 years. Owing money meant that you and your family had no other choice but to go into slavery. I think we should question why the person was in debt in the first place. Why wasn't there a job that paid a livable wage, or why didn't society take care of the person if they couldn't work? My parsha also discusses the slave who liked working for their owner and didn't want to be freed. This was surprising to me because I usually think of slavery as something bad that no one would want. But the Torah suggests slavery might be beneficial to the person who was enslaved, not just the person who owned them. This myth of the happy slave has been perpetuated across time in many different cultures. In school, we learned about Frederick Douglass, a former American slave. In his 1845 book, Douglass contradicts the false narrative of the happy slave, stating that it hides the true cruelty and suffering. When the practice of owning slaves is a common part of society, there has to be some way for people to break the cruel recurring cycle. We learn right from wrong at a young age, from our parents and our society, so maybe the Israelites thought slavery was normal, even if it was horrible. Maybe by stating these laws about freeing your slave and taking care of them, the Torah is trying to teach Israelites how not to treat slaves by reminding them of their own experience. This is a really different type of slavery from what the Israelites experienced in Egypt. Maybe because they knew how it felt to be treated poorly, they would never force that onto someone else. This law of not sending a slave away empty-handed also teaches us a lesson about how everyone should have money to buy food, clothing to wear, access to an education, and so on. Just like a person trying to work for 7 years for nothing, even to repay a debt, we should make sure that we treat everyone fairly and make sure they're properly cared for. In the Torah, it is a slave owner's responsibility to ensure the slaves who are being freed are compensated for the work they've done and are taken care of. In my parsha, sometimes a slave owner helps change the circumstances of someone who was enslaved by giving them what they need to be successful. All over the world, it is our responsibility to ensure that everyone reaches out to one another with a helping hand. Most of us know that people don't have what they need, but we unintentionally don't say anything. Our brains have accepted that, but what can we do to change it? This shows up in my life more and more every single day. I know a lot about politics because of social media, and I've been following a lot of the recent protests and unnecessary harm to innocent humans over something they cannot change. We have this responsibility to stand up and protect others. Unfortunately, we don't always do this. Maybe because we are scared or we don't know how. If Egyptians had stood up against the slave owners, they may have changed things for the Israelites. Who knows how different things may have turned out. Even one person can make a difference, whether it is stopping slavery or showing an act of compassion towards someone in a marginalized group. Over these past couple of months, I have recognized and reflected where my responsibilities as a person who is able to provide aid are not being met. This inspired me to work on my aesthetic project that addresses the ongoing food insecurity problem. I volunteer at the Chicago Common Pantry, which provides people with free groceries. People who need food can come to the pantry, fill out a form, choose what they want, and then we pack their grocery order for them. This gives people a lot of dignity to be able to choose what they want to eat, which I think is so important. People who are enslaved didn't get to make a choice, or any choice of what they wanted to do with their bodies for that matter. They didn't get to decide when they sleep, when they ate, or what they wore. Imagine how much this diminished people's self-worth to think that a complete stranger got to dictate their entire lives. I've also been raising money for an organization called Heifer International, which is all about helping people be self-sustainable. Giving someone food or clothes doesn't last forever, but Heifer helps people be more self-sufficient by giving a family an animal, which it can use for resources like milk for a long period of time. I wanted to do both these things in my aesthetic project to contribute to things that help right now and for the long term. When we are born, we don't get to choose where we live, how much money we have, or the color of our skin. So people who are born with more privilege have the responsibility to help others change their circumstances. I have begun trying to fulfill my responsibilities that the Torah was trying to teach us how to do many years ago. I think it's important to provide people with the resources they need to survive, but I think it's also important to stand up for what you know is right, like Maria, who I mentioned earlier. During my bat mitzvah process, I got an opportunity through a twinning program to learn more about someone my age who had an impact during the Holocaust. Her name is Maria Farkas. She's Polish and Hungarian and Jewish, like my family. When the Germans occupied Hungary in 1944, she invited her friend Suzanne Jacobs and her family to stay safe in her home. The Farkas family loaned the Jacobs their identity documents so the Jacobs family could get passports out of the area. The Jacobs family were caught and put into labor camp, and when the Farkas family found out, they smuggled them food and goods to help them survive. Members of my own family went to Bergen-Belsen, and most didn't survive. My family could have benefited from a family like the Farkas. Eventually, when the Jacobs family escaped and stayed safely hidden in the Farkas home until the Jews were freed from the camps in 1945. The Jacobs family was able to live their full lives, and Maria Farkas is in her 90s and lives in Budapest today. Maria's friend Suzanne Jacobs wasn't able to have a bat mitzvah, both because she was a woman and because of the Holocaust. I want my bat mitzvah to be in honor of Suzanne, who wasn't able to have one, and also in honor of Maria, whose family made it possible for the Jacobs to survive. The parsha gets at our basic responsibility to take care of others and the people around us, to be loyal to them and to look out for them, even when there's nothing in it for us. That is what Maria did, and that is what we should all continue to do. Thank you.
Wow, right? All right, now we should read that Torah that Sydney just so beautifully taught us about. So if you are called up for an aliyah, you will come up over here, you'll say the blessings, and then after your aliyah, you'll shift over to stand by Rabbi Stephen. We'll have sort of a rotating honor guard of people coming up to read Torah. So we will begin with, for the first aliyah, V'yazor, v'yagen v'yoshia l'chol ha'chosim ba v'nomar amen. Hakol havu godal Eloheinu udnu kavod laTorah ya'amdu. Aunt Deborah and Uncle Josh. Who are Devorah bat Yehudit ve'Eliezer Yoshua ben Sid ve'Linda l'aliyah rishona. Baruch shenatan Torah l'Yam Yisrael b'kedushato v'atamed b'kim b'adonechem v'chayim kulchem hayom.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamuvrach.
Baruch Adonai hamuvrach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
The first aliyah can be found on page 1074. If you have one of these soft books, I notice a lot of you don't have the soft books. They're in the back. If you want to read along, you can go grab some. We are on page 1074, Deuteronomy 14:22. And maybe if we have a volunteer to go grab some and distribute some among the folks, that'd be great.
Oh, okay. Lisa, go. Okay.
Amen. מקץ 7 שנים תעשה שמיטה, וזה דבר השמיטה שמות. כל בעל מעשה ידו אשר יישא ברעהו, לא ייגש את רעהו ואת אחיו, כי קרא שמיטה לאדוני. את הנוכרי תיגש, ואשר יהיה לך את אחיך תשמט את ידך. תשמט ידך. Really? No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. You want to do it again? Or just want to split number two in half?
Go back and read in English.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's fine. We'll just split number 2 in half, right? Because you only did 3 verses. We're good. We're good. We're great. We did great. We're doing great, folks.
All right.
Do you want to do that? Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu et Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'techenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
The outline is not correct, as we've surmised in this situation. It's totally fine. Yeah, come hang with me.
Ya'amod.
Go back. The second aliyah can be found on page 1077. We're on 15:4.
Ya'amod Moshe ben Lev aliyah shniya.
Baruch Hu es Adonai Barach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'no b'kol ha'amim. V'nasan lanu es Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Efes ki lo yevecha evyon ki yivarechecha Adonai. Ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala l'rishta. Rak im shamoa tishma b'kol Adonai Elohecha lishmor la'asot et kol hamitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. Ki Adonai Elohecha berachecha ka'asher diber lach v'ha'avateta goyim rabim ve'ata lo ta'avot u'mashalta b'goyim rabim uvecha lo yimshelu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasan lanu Torah emes v'hayu lanu nata b'sukenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yashar koach to Mark, who I've gotten to know in a class recently on actually the Eish Kodesh, who is a rabbi who lived in the Warsaw Ghetto during the Holocaust. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you, Mark. And if you are interested in doing more good Jewish learning, we have so many cool things happening over the summer, and you can talk to Rabbi Stephen about them, and you can be like Mark and learn cool Jewish stuff. All right, for the third aliyah, we are going to read about one of my favorite lines in the Torah, which says, "There shall be no needy among you, and here's what you do to take care of the needy among you." Which seems like a contradiction, but is actually a recognition that we can both dream of a world where no one needs to be taken care of because they have everything they need to take care of themselves, and that until we reach that world, we have an obligation to do good things for others, whatever is in our capacity. So I want to invite up anyone in the community who has done good for someone else, whether that's donating to charity with your money, with your time, whether that's advocating for justice or writing to your elected officials to say, here's how I think we can make a more just and equitable world. If you have done good in the world this year, this aliyah is for you. Come on up. Should be like a big group of people coming up here.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Own it, yeah.
We're at the bottom of page 1077, 15:7. More
Own
folks,
it.
more
You're
folks.
recognized for it, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
gathering outside.
Do we
I don't know.
Okay. Hello. Here we go. Hang on. Yeah, who wants to? Sure. Get in there. Get in there.
Boop the Torah.
So we're gonna move right here. Yes. All right. Hang on. Here is the blessing. All right. So start here.
Baruch Adonai Hamborah.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. What verses are we reading from?
We are
We are 15:7. Yeah? Yes. That's where you ended.
right.
Yep.
7 through 11. Amen. Ki yevecha evyon me'achad achecha be'achad sharecha uve'artzecha asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach lo ta'ametz et levavcha ve'lo tikpotz et yadcha me'achecha ha'evyon ki fatoach tiftach et yadcha lo והאבט תביתנו די מחסורו אשר יחסר לו הישמר לך פן יהיה דבר אם לבבך בליה לאמור קרבה שנת השבע שנת השמיטה וראה עיניך באחיך האביון ולא תיתן לו וקרא עליך אל אדוני והיה בך חטא נתון תיתן לו ולא ירא לבבך בתיתך לו כי בגלל הדבר הזה יברכך אדוני אלוהיך בכל מעשיך ובכל משלח ידיך כי לא יחדל אביון מקרב הארץ על כן אנוכי מצווך לאמור פתוח תפתח את ידך לאחיך לעניך לאביונך בארצך.
Here? And before we bless it afterward, for those of you who weren't reading along, however, if there is a needy person among you, one of your kinsmen, in any of the settlements in the land your God is giving you, don't harden your heart or shut your hand against your needy brother. Rather, open your hand and give him whatever he needs. Beware, lest you think to yourself, oh, the 7th year is coming, the year of remission, when we forgive all debts, so that you are mean to your needy kinsman and you give him nothing. He will cry out to God against you, and you will incur guilt. Give to them readily and have no regrets when you do, for in return God will bless you in all your efforts and in all of your undertakings. For there will never cease to be needy ones in your land, and that is why I command you, open your hand to the poor and to the needy brother in your land.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
One of you stand here.
Oh, yeah. Over lunch, I want to hear about all the things.
Yeah.
I want to hear about all the things. And one of you can stay up here as sort of an emissary of the group.
Voluntold.
And we pause now for a Mishaberach, which is a prayer for the ill in our communities, people who you're thinking about this morning. You are here. They are wherever they are, maybe here in Chicago, maybe somewhere far away. And this is sort of a moment to call attention and prayer to people who you may not be able to do much for, but you can pray, and that's actually an incredibly powerful thing to do. And then it also might remind you, oh, there is something I could do. I could drop a text. I could make a phone call. I could drop by with lunch. I could visit. And so we turn to 82, toward the bottom of 82 on the side of the page. That's where the words are. But there's going to be a moment halfway through the prayer where I'll invite you to share the names of the people who you're praying for. So we do it all together, get the whole room praying for everybody who we're thinking about. Even if we don't know each other's people, we pray for each other's people. So if you're thinking about somebody, I'll invite you to stand so you'll be ready to say the name. If there's somebody you're praying for this morning. Start here. Any other names?
Andrew, Donald, and Jericho. Grandpa.
Misha Berach. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Refuah shlema. Body and spirit.
You heard Sydney talk about Torah. Now it is time to hear her read and chant it in the original words from the scroll. For this aliyah, we are going to call up Sydney's grandparents. You want to make your way up here. We're calling up Jeff's parents, Judy and Larry. Ya'amdu. Larry Rosen. Yehudit ve'Eliezer l'aliyah revi'i.
We are on page 1079. 1512.
You should be here.
Judy, come on in.
Okay. You're going to start here, so you're going to show us. Stephen, where's the clock?
Did Sydney show you where she's reading from?
Sydney's clock. You're going to touch what Sydney's showing you. Touch here.
Touch it there.
Uh-huh. Yep, right here. Kiss.
Okay.
Kiss. Right. Now you can do blessing.
Okay, we start.
Baruch Adonai HaMbarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMbarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam.
asher bachar banu makol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Ki macher lecha, ahicha ha'ivri, oh ha'ivriya, be'avdecha sheshanim, uvashana hashvi'it, teshalchenu chofshi me'imah. Vehi teshalchenu chofshi me'imach, lo teshalchenu reikam. Ha'anek ta'anik lo mitzoncha, umigarnecha, umikvecha, asher barachecha, Adonai Elohecha tisen lo, vezacharta, ki eved chayita, be'eretz Mitzrayim, vivtecha, Adonai Elohecha, alkein, Elohi yitzavecha, et hadavar chazercha.
Okay.
The last part?
Yep.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chei olam natal Eloheinu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeah. Perfect. Cheers.
And Mazel
Tamod, Tamod, Habachura, Habat Mitzvah, Ziva, Bat Aaron, Jennifer, L'Aliyah Chamishit.
Yay!
On 1079, verse 16.
What's going around right now is not a little mid-service snack.
Not now.
It is a celebratory prop that you will just hold on to until cued to release.
Just stick it under your seat. Forget about it for now.
Don't eat it. Okay. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorah.
Baruch Adonai Borach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. B'chaya ki yomar elecha lo etze me'imach, ki ahevcha v'et betecha, ki tov lo imam. Belakafta et hamartzeya, v'natata be'ozno uvadelet, b'chaya lecha eved olam, ve'af le'amatcha ta'aseken. Lo ikshe be'einecha, v'shalechecha oto chofshi me'imaki, mishne sachar sachir, adivcha sheshanim, uverachecha Adonai Elohecha, bechol asher te'aseh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'toheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
All right, I'm going to give Sydney a blessing. We're going to sing her a blessing, and then when we say Mazel Tov, that's when you're going to throw your candy at her, okay? So hold your crinkling for just one more minute.
Swear, Ben, Jake, if you throw it hard, we're gonna get pelted with candy.
Yes, you also. I hide.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, protect us.
All right, I know the prospect of throwing candy is very exciting, but hold your fire for just a moment. Sydney, Mazel Tov! Oh my God, you did so great.
Thank you.
A few weeks ago, when we realized you needed a Hebrew name for this experience, I said to you, why don't you think about the kind of person that you want to be in the Jewish people, what kind of essence you want to sort of stand up for at your bat mitzvah, and we just called you to the Torah with the name that you chose, which is Ziva, which means like a shining light. You are a shining light for the Jewish people. You have been a shining light for me in getting to know you. It is so clear from the smiles and the tears that everyone is shedding today that you are such a shining light for all of the people in your life. When you become a bat mitzvah, what you're doing is saying, this matters to me and I want a part of it. And you're taking in all of the things that Jewish tradition has to teach you, which you did so beautifully in your Dvar Torah, but you're also giving back to it. You are changing Jewish tradition by your participation. And I am just so glad that you decided to do that, that you brought your light and your spirit and your thoughtfulness and your warmth and your care, all of these incredible things about you, you brought them fully to this experience. You went from knowing absolutely no Hebrew to reading Torah and leading us in prayer and sharing these wise thoughts. You have been such a light for us this morning. I hope that you continue to feel like you are a shining light for everyone who has the great pleasure of meeting you. It is such an honor to welcome you into the Jewish people as an adult. We're going to say the priestly blessing, which the tradition was that the priests would raise their hands up like this with their fingers spread out. The idea being that like all the blessing that exists in the world gets kind of channeled through your fingers. So if you would like to also stretch your hands out towards Sydney, maybe your fingers don't do this, don't worry about it, but to stretch your hands forward, that all of the blessing that we have all experienced, we are sending her way. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. And we can all say, Kain Yehi Ratzon. May it be so. Mazel tov. When all the little kids come back in the room, we invite them to come and be our little Roombas, our human Roombas. But the truth is, any adults who are hungry and want a fruit gem, you can come up and crawl on the floor and grab one too. You're invited. Oh, any kids in the room? I didn't realize we still had some. Yeah, you're a kid and you want some. Or you're a kid at heart.
Yeah, if you're a kid at heart, if you're ready to get down on your hands and knees, there's a bunch of sun-kissed fruit gems on this floor. Yeah. But you can only take as much as you can carry.
Shall leave the corners of your fields.
Right, remember what the Torah says about sharing with the needy.
Exactly. The orange are the best. Orange are the best. Yeah, there you go. Okay. They're the ones that actually taste like the thing.
All right, you got 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shkoyach. Well done. I'll take it. Oh. Thanks. Did you get one, Sydney? All right, very good.
You got two.
All right. Over to you, Rabbi Steve.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And Chag Pesach Sameach. It's also Passover. I'm a little hot on the mic. Thanks. I'm a loud talker. So I don't eat pizza every day. Although I actually think that's a good aspiration in my life. But there's something about not like being able to have pizza for 8 days that makes me like really, really want it. It's like that idea that right? Does anybody eat pizza every day? No? Okay, yeah. But it's like when you can't have, if I told you right now that you cannot have amazing, delicious pizza, like I feel like your immediate response is to crave it. Is to crave it. And maybe it's not pizza. Maybe you're craving just like bread or beer or cake or any of those other delicious things that I'm going to also shamelessly plug. We have spots left at our party tonight, the Releavening. We're going to be at Half Acre Brewery, where there'll be lots of carbs to eat and drink and consume. But like this moment when we are restricted in some way, whatever your Passover practice is, this kind of restriction comes in, and all we can think about is what we can no longer have. And I want us to imagine how our ancestors, the Israelites, must have felt, because they had to do this for 40 more years of only eating whatever the desert provided, of eating the same thing every single day. But this is actually truly what I believe to be the point of Passover, to not only imagine the story that we read at the Seder, the story of the Israelites going from slavery and degradation into freedom and expansiveness, but to really feel it, to really lean into what our tradition instructs us to do, which is to say, as we read this story together at the Seder table, this is what God did for me, not for my ancestors, for me when I left Egypt. And yes, this includes getting bored of consuming that same flat, dry cracker every day. And really, actually, the monotony of matzah should make us rail against these restrictions. It should make us crave. It should make us yearn for the freedom to eat whatever we want, whenever we want to eat it. We are really meant to relive this story of our people's degradation, of our own degradation. Eating maror, a bitter herb so spicy and hot that it brings tears to your eyes. And then, a couple nights ago, many of us gathered around tables to have this sumptuous meal and to drink an indulgent 4 cups or maybe more of wine, as if we were experiencing freedom for the very first time ourselves. To sing all night because we can. To stay up late talking to people we love because we can. To hit snooze a few more times that next day because we must and because we can. And as we lean into this core narrative of our tradition, as we reshape our sense of self and the sense of the world around us with this collective memory of this journey from slavery to freedom, we read a series of parshiot, of sections from the Torah. And so over these 8 days, if you've been tuning in to Morning Minyan with us online or have been digging into the Torah yourself, or even if you're just hearing Torah for the first time today during Passover, during these 8 days, we read a series of passages from Exodus and from the book of Leviticus and from the book of Numbers and just now from the book of Deuteronomy. And these verses that we're pulling not only talk about the story of Passover, but they also are some of the kind of highlights of the ethical foundation of Judaism. And I believe are often counted among the parts of the Torah that are the favorites, the ones that make us most proud to be Jewish or Jewish-adjacent people. To not defraud the stranger, to care for the orphan, to provide for the widow, to compensate workers fairly and on time, to feed the hungry, to provide rest for the weary, and to render justice thoughtfully and without bias. As we read these verses, as we think about these passages that help shape our ethical tradition, our moral inheritance, I think it is so important as we relive this story to remember that the transition from slavery to freedom, as fun as Passover might be, was not easy. We had literally just taken our first step out of the ghettos of Egypt when Pharaoh summoned his armies and chased us to the edge of the Sea of Reeds. We were afraid that we might be slaughtered standing on that shore, and somehow, miraculously, we were saved and the sea split in front of us to provide safe passage to the other side. But on the other side, we found a new enemy. The Amalekites were waiting for us, and they pursued us on our journey from the Sea of Reeds to Mount Sinai, picking off the weakest and the slowest at the back of the line. The elderly, the ill, those who couldn't keep up. And so we found ourselves standing before God as Moses receives those 10 commandments, right? This is the Charlton Heston moment and or Prince of Egypt, pick your movie. And we receive these commandments that will provide the blueprint that allows us to transition from an enslaved people to a free people, to build a society that will protect us and hold us on this journey ahead. And one might reasonably expect, given that we have just experienced 4 centuries of degradation, and we have just experienced the fear of being slaughtered, and we have just experienced so much loss and so much oppression and so much violence, that these guidelines would include things like trust no one, or build really high walls, or guard your resources, or protect your own. But as I just mentioned, these are actually not the commandments that we receive in the Torah. Rather than giving into the temptation, and the very understandable temptation, to turn inward and care only about ourselves, our experience of slavery demands that we look outward, welcoming the stranger, pursuing justice, and developing an extreme intolerance for any form of oppression or degradation. I want to take a moment to think about how truly remarkable this is. We are a people who've just experienced the scarcity of slavery, yet we respond to this experience with abundance, sharing freely of our resources, of our time, and of ourselves. In the passage that we actually just read today, we learn about the Shemitah year. This is a year that happens every 7 years on a cycle. We actually find ourselves this year in a Shemitah year. And this is a time when we would let the land lie fallow, when debts would be forgiven, when the indentured servant would go free. It was an environmental and societal reset that was only possible when we operated from a mentality of abundance, that there would be enough food to last us through the year, that we could actually forgive debts without consequence to the structure of society or who owed whom what. This is perhaps best expressed through the verse that Rabbi Dina mentioned earlier, Efes ki lo yihyeh becha evyon. There shall not be a single needy individual among you. And lest you think that this is just a temporary break from destitution, the rabbis emphasize that this commandment should be understood as the complete and total eradication of physical and emotional and spiritual impoverishment. So if remembrance, if reliving this memory as our own is the function of Passover, then perhaps this is its purpose, to take the memory of oppression and resisting those temptations of insularity and distrust, that we use it as the foundation for building a future free from all forms of degradation. Seems like a tall order, right? But I want to propose that actually this instinct is not so far from us. To respond to the fear and uncertainty of crisis with the mindset of abundance is something that we have all already done. I think just a few years ago, as we begin to transition, I mean, it's so lovely to see all your faces, as we begin to transition into a place where we feel safer to gather again, only a couple years ago, at this time, we were tuning in online to connect to each other. We couldn't even fathom what it would look like to gather in person again. And in that crisis, in a time in which it was so tempting to just turn into ourselves and our communities, we created funds to help each other. I saw people going out of their way to deliver groceries to folks who couldn't leave their homes. We rallied together at a time when it would be so understandable to just protect yourself and your own. And we showed up for each other. We even reshaped society. The government gave money to folks so that we could make it through the year. And maybe it wasn't enough, maybe it wasn't sufficient, but it was a complete change. It was a reset that came from a mindset of abundance. And I don't think we even have to look that far into the past. I think we can even look in this room right now. Each and every one of you showing up today comes from a place of abundance. Because maybe there's some place else that you need to be. I am sure each and every one of you has a task that needs to get done today, or something that's on your mind, or a heartbreak that you hold, or a loss that you're feeling. And yet you show up with an abundance of joy and of gratitude to celebrate somebody, to celebrate Shabbat together, to make sure that Sydney can have this space to enter our community and inherit this ethical tradition that emphasizes this turning outward. I think we can do it again. Last night, we heard from Felicia and Martin, two amazing Mishkanites, who emphasized that the lessons of Passover should not be kept in Passover. As Rabbi Lizzie mentioned earlier, this is a refrain we hear throughout all of our services every single day, this memory of leaving Egypt, and it's a memory that compels us to respond to crisis, to respond to the darkness that we do see in the world around us right now, rather than with fear and scarcity, with abundance and generosity. So I look forward to taking that from this space into the world that just so desperately needs it right now. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.
Rabbi Stephen. We turn to page 90. We call up Hagba and Golel.
Yeah. Are you the cousins who are lifting?
Our Torah racer and our Torah rapper. We all stand. You can clap your own hands as if to support, because this is hard.
Right. Take it away.
Grab it.
No, you're going to lift it up.
Yeah.
So you're
Grab
going
there, grab here.
to take it like this. You're going to slide it off the table, push down, and then you're going to lift it up, okay?
Slide more. Yeah.
Push down.
Put down.
Torah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yam Moshe.
Ay, the top of 92. Ki lekatov natati lachem Torati al tazovu Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meusha deracheha darchei noam bechol netzivoteha shalom ashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu keketem. Yasher koach. Can take a seat. Yeah, sure. We'll take a seat.
So the average Shabbat morning service in most synagogues, I think, in America goes somewhere between 8:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. and could start anywhere in between or end anywhere in between, depending on what the things are that you do and how much of it you do and in what order you do them and how long you take to do them. So I think what we do at Mishkan, starting at around 9:30 and ending around 12, is like right in the middle. Some people, like I grew up with a service that was about 45 minutes long and left out most of this stuff. And so as an adult, I was like shocked and appalled that that there was all this stuff I didn't learn. And then I also had the experience of sitting in services that were like 3 times as long, going, oh, now I get why they didn't do all this stuff in my shul growing up. So for those of you, again, for whom this is maybe a first time or a first time in a long time, thank you for hanging with every single beat, sort of like, oh, there's this singing, and there's this reading, and there's this Torah, and there's this Torah. And so because it's the second day of festival, the last day of Passover, in a moment we're going to do a part of the service that Rabbi Dina will explain called Yizkor, which we only do a few times a year. And then we will wrap services. And we'll probably be done around noon. So just giving you a heads up of what's to come. If you are local here in Chicago and you enjoyed what you saw this morning or you're intrigued by it, we don't just do Shabbat morning services. Well, we do every other week Shabbat morning services, and we do every other week Friday night services, and we're always online for both of those. You are invited to come back. You're invited to explore more deeply. As Rabbi Dina mentioned, there are all kinds of programs, whether Jewish learning or Jewish partying, like tonight, for example, going to Half Acre Brewery and breaking the Passover fast. And then I'm just going to mention some things. I'm not going to tell you dates. I'm not going to tell you times because you're not going to remember them. But if you're intrigued by anything you hear, go on our website and, go on the calendar and find it and hopefully join us. On Wednesday, I'm not going to do dates. Learning about Israel from an NPR correspondent, Linda Gradstein. Spiritual spring cleaning with the experts in racial justice and also Raja Yoga that Rabbi Stephen was mentioning earlier. A musical davening team open call if you're a singing person and you realize what they're doing up here might be something I want to do. I'm doing a book group, reading a book called Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor. Queer Story Slam with one of the base Hillels in Andersonville. Great challah bake-off, learning how to bake challah, and this is a family event. And finally, a Talmud learning series. And those are all led by different facilitators, and we also have small groups, so like community-led classes. Matthew is leading a Kabbalah group. We have a small group Queer to Shabbat potluck dinner. And finally, Rosh Chodesh Circle. That's for female-identified people who want to celebrate the new moon and our connection to the cycles of the moon. And then finally, I would be remiss if I did not also say, for this month, we are raising money for the Mensch Academy. The Mensch Academy is our kids' Jewish spirituality and education program, and there is a grandparent who has generously thrown down the gauntlet and said, if you guys can raise $100,000, we will give you $100,000. But if you raise less than that, that's what you get. And so we are committed to hitting this, and we're engaging anybody who thinks that, kind of like what you saw here this morning and the kind of values and inclusivity that you have seen is something you want to support. And if you think to yourself, well, I wish I had a bar mitzvah like that. I wish I had been, taught in that way or learned in that way. It's not too late to support a place that does do that. And so I just want to say in advance, thank you for anybody who feels like that might be a worthy way to express yourself in this month. And we are going to now transition into Yizkor.
So in the Yizkor service, we have a chance to remember anyone who we wished was here celebrating this holiday with us. And one of my former congregants from the synagogue I worked at in New York City wrote this really beautiful Dvar Torah this week, connecting Yizkor to Passover. You can look it up. It's on the JTS website. Bill Plevin is his name. There's one piece that I wanted to draw out that I felt was particularly poignant, which is that when we mourn someone that we have lost, we have all of the memories of them that we try to hold on to, right? And we start to tell the stories of them as a way of holding on to them, even though they're not with us physically. That's what Jewish tradition says, may their memory be a blessing, right? And so the grief process is one of turning a person into memories that feel like blessings. Bill wrote that what was really interesting to him when he sat Shiva for his mother earlier this year was that he had the image of his mother, the person who had sat on the floor playing trucks with him and who had made sure that he was taken care of and had food and clothing and drove him to school and all of these things. And then all of these people came to Shiva and told him stories of the version of his mother that they had known. That she had been a lawyer and a powerful advocate and a mentor and a person who had sat on countless boards of charitable organizations. And suddenly, his mother was not just the person who had raised him, but also the person who had mentored someone he'd never met before, who had directed funds towards a group of people he'd never thought about. All of these ways that his mother's memory grew in his eyes through the stories of other people that they shared with him. And that becomes the person for us. I remember when my Zadie died, when my grandpa died, and the only story I could think to tell about him was that he loved to take the pool noodles at their house in Palm Springs that had the little hole in them and dunk them under the water so they filled with water and then sneak up behind you and blow the water out into the back of your head. Now, turns out my Zadie was also a very serious lawyer and real estate broker and did all these deals, and all these people came to his Shiva and told me about this person who was a force of nature, and I was like, yeah, he was a force of pool terrorism. Right? But now I'm able to have incorporated all of those memories into the person that I remember at Yizkor as the person who would do silly things and who taught me all of the swear words that I now know in English and Yiddish, but also the person who changed the world in his own ways, and that all of those stories that have been shared with me become part of the blessing that is his memory. So as we say Yizkor, you may be thinking of one person or many people. We're going to give you a few moments of quiet time to tell yourself some of the stories that you remember about them, and to also think about the stories that have been told to you. Maybe you're going to say Yizkor for someone you actually never got to meet in person or barely remember, but they're so alive in your memory because of the stories that have been shared with you that their memory, their blessing grows and grows the more that you talk about them, the more that you share them with others. Some people have a tradition of not staying in the room to say Yizkor if they have not yet lost a parent. I want to let you know that is a tradition that you are welcome to observe, and a tradition that you are also welcome to not observe and to stay here and to hold memories of anyone who is beloved to you, whether you have lost a parent or not. And we'll rise in just a moment for the Yizkor prayer.
If you want to turn to page 129, you'll see there are different prayers for different people. And so that might help you have something concrete to say, even in your own mind, before we all stand together. 129. $129 and $130. We'll stand for El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochein B'Meromim, המציא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה ומעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות כל אלה שהזכרנו לעולמם בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותם. Merciful God, grant perfect rest beneath the wings of the Shekhinah to all those whose memories were invoked today, who have gone to their eternal home, together with the souls of all the holy and pure whose light shines brightly and eternally. Keep them under the shelter of your wings forever, and may their souls be bound up in the bonds of life. May they rest in peace, and may their memories ever be for a blessing. And we say, Amen. Amen. Turn to 131. Middle of Psalm 23. Gam ki elech begates hamavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha Heima yenachamuni shivtecha umishantecha Heima yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged zorerai dishanta v'shamen roshi kosi revaya kosi revaya ach tov
ישבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים, לאורך ימים, לאורך ימים.
Kaddish Yatom Mourner's Kaddish is on page 132.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach rutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam U'Lalmei Almaya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha
Brichu.
Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
May all of their memories be blessings for you.
We turn to 108 as we wrap our service. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotze bereshit, shelo asanu kagoye aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. 109. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Repeat. והשב אותה And motzi, that is to say, a glass of wine or grape juice, whoever knows what's in this thing, we leave it to Sydney to discover. And challah to the front. What? Oh, not matzah. Not to ruin the surprise, indeed. All right, if people want to turn to 113 and sing Kiddush along with us. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat ledoratam berit olam V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat ledoratam berit olam Beini uvein v'nei Yisrael Oti leolam, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledoratam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash. Last time, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledoratam berit olam. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days are for work, and on the 7th day you rest. Let it be a day of rest on which you do no work. Not you, not your children, not the people who work for you, not your animals, and not the stranger within your gates. For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is within them. Those are metaphorical days, of course, and rested on the 7th. Al kain barach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat v'yikadshehu ele moadei Adonai mikra kodesh asher tikru otam b'moadam v'yiraber Moshe et moadei Adonai el b'nei Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam borei peri hagafen. Woo! What was it? Grape juice? Wine? Grape juice. Great. Well, l'chaim. L'chaim. Should you want to?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Take and pass, take and pass, take and pass. We're going to sing a little bit as you can all begin to move your chairs out of the way, and we will bring tables out for Kiddush lunch. Thank you to the Rosen Keys for all of your support this morning and for bringing all of your friends to daven and sing together. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzier nivra le'en nasa b'chefzo kol azay melech shemo nikra azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch